Good evening and welcome in to DawgsCentral on a Wednesday night. My name is Graham Coffee, and we are here on the bye week. You might notice I am in a little bit different setting than usual. I have been traveling. I am back home in North Carolina, spending some time with family right now. So you guys all get to enjoy the bottom third of this wonderful painting behind me. Um, yeah, Georgia took care of Vanderbilt last week. I think took care is proper terminology. This was a classic Kirby Smart uh, long con style special. A lot of what we have gotten used to seeing over the last couple of years, right? Which is like there was a time, particularly in 2021 and prior, where Georgia, it seemed like, was very invested in winning these games by not as much as they could. Kirby was never running up the score on anybody, but Georgia really wanted to beat the crap out of teams like Vanderbilt. And I'm not saying that they don't want to do that now, but what you've seen over the last year and a half, the last season and a half, is that Georgia almost uses these games like practice. This was like straight out of the 2022 Kent State kind of playbook, where Georgia used this game to practice some things that it felt like it needed to work on and was as vanilla as possible. Kind of a lot like the 2022 Kentucky game that was 16-6, where, Georgia just, like, they controlled the game, they controlled the ball, but they'd fiddle around in the red zone and they were as vanilla as possible. And they, basically just didn't burn any like touchdown plays onto tape. And this was kind of like that. Once Georgia got control of the game, particularly at halftime, it seemed like they were pretty set on possessing the football and not pushing things downfield. Vanderbilt played like a very soft style zone, and Georgia seemed pretty content to like throw screens for 6 or 7 yards and run inside slam. And that was about it, really, for for the third and fourth quarter. If you were stressed out by this game, I would tell you that you're talking about a team that's on a literally a historic run. Like, this is, and I mean, I probably shouldn't say this considering like what I do from a content standpoint, but this game is meaningless. Like, it really was meaningless in the sense of it doesn't really tell us anything about what Georgia is or isn't. It was just another one of these kind of games where you saw Georgia like do what it had to do. And especially after Brock and Truss went down, it was like, let's shorten this thing and get out of here quickly and early. I, you know, Georgia 2.1 more yards per play than Kentucky. 2.0 is kind of the benchmark of an elite team from a net yards per play standpoint. So they surpassed that. They ran 34 more plays. They outgained Vandy by 323 yards. They never punted. They possessed the ball for 15 minutes longer than the Commodores, and they had 8 scoring opportunities in this game, despite a third quarter that only featured one drive for each offense. So they dominated it in every single way possible. But I get that it doesn't feel like that because you're not looking at a 50 burger. I would remind you that you did see the 50 burger against Kentucky, which is a much better team and a much better defense than Vanderbilt. And you saw not a different offense, but a much more open offense against the Wildcats as well. So don't stress. Good news from this game is that Georgia had by far its best inside rushing game of the season. Kind of alluded to that earlier, but prior to the Vanderbilt game, Georgia had run inside zone read 77 times this year. They had a 54.5% success rate and were averaging 5 yards a carry on those plays. That's respectable. Um, Against Auburn and South Carolina, they only had 4.2 yards a carry on 27 attempts with inside zone read. That's not really getting it done for a concept that is your most run concept in the offense. Like, that's not an effective or efficient way to go about a football game, and especially not effective way to keep yourself into manageable second and third down situations. So against Vandy, they ran inside zone read, 16 times for 206 yards. Yes, they hit a couple long runs, but the down efficiency was also very good. They had almost a 69% success rate, so that was very nice on the inside zone read concepts. And breaking that down even further, they had 12 attempts on inside slam that averaged 16.4 yards a carry, and 8 of those 12 attempts were successful plays. And if you're new here, because everyone, sometimes this is your first show, success rate just is basically a measurement of staying on schedule. So it's getting more than half the yards needed for a first down on first or second down. So, on a 2nd and 10, a 3-yard play would not be successful, but on 2nd and 4, a 3-yard play would be successful. And it's achieving a first down on 3rd down or 4th down. Those are what are quote unquote successful plays. So yeah, I mean, Georgia, they did what they needed to do up front. The big story of this game, obviously, is the injury to Brock Bowers. I am going to we'll take care of that in a very in-depth way when we go through the questions that we have loaded up here from subscribers. So we'll get there. Before we get there, as you know, probably by the t-shirt or the sweatshirt that I'm wearing, this show is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. And Home Field Apparel is awesome. They've been incredible to us. It's incredible to work with them. I consider the relationship we have with them not like an advertiser working with a show or a website, but I consider them a partner in what we're doing. And they're supporting us as an independent media outlet. And I think they support the way that we do media in sort of a little bit more of a, I don't want to say like new age, but we are new media. We are you know, maybe not your granddad's way of consuming college football content. And that's not a knock to anybody that does media that way. It's just not exactly how we're doing things. So we are excited to share that we're going to be doing a event with Home Field in Athens. The Friday night was before the Missouri game. We're calling it Home Field Homecoming, or that's what they're calling it. They will be doing a happy hour that is from 5 to 10 p.m. at the Foundry Hotel. The Foundry is run by the Graduate. They do a phenomenal job downtown Athens, 295 East Doherty Street. And they will have free drinks there for you. If you have a student ID, you can get half off your home field purchases. You can see all the UGA home field gear up close and in person. And there will be some new releases that are going to knock your socks off. Some things that some of you have been asking for a long time will be launched on that day. And if you're there, you will be able to buy it and not have to wait for it to ship. So good opportunity to get your hands on some stuff early. And the most exciting part for me personally of that is that we're going to be doing a live podcast recording, kind of a live panel basically during the event. That's going to be from 7 to 8 p.m. And it's going to be moderated by Alex Kirshner from Split Zone Duo, which is a phenomenal college football podcast. They cover the sport on a more national scope. He's with Stephen Godfrey and Richard Johnson. And truthfully, like that, it's one of the few pieces of college football media that I consider to be like an essential part of my week. they're excellent, and I'm a fan of their work. So it'll be exciting to get on stage with Alex. And we're going to be joined by George Foster from 100 Sanford, Jim Wood from I Got a Podcast, and our friend John Smith, who is kind of one of our partners at DawgsCentral. So a really great kind of group of contributors of Georgia viewpoints. George played the game. The rest of us have commentated on it or podcasted about it for a while, and we'll have a meet and greet as well with other DawgsCentral personalities and some special guests that are a lot more special than I am. Have been rumored to be showing up. So check it out. You can sign up for it now at the Foundry's website. Just type in the Graduate Athens into your Google search bar there and go to the events tab. RSVP, because there's only about 250 seats available for the panel part of it, and those are going quick, which is super exciting to see because the event is still, a couple weeks out. So we hope you'll join us. Would love to meet you in person. I'll be there the entire time, hanging out before and after. We'll take questions from the crowd during the live panel part, and it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's get into the whole thing here. I got a lot of really good questions. Shout out to the DawgsCentral subscriber base for not just asking questions, which in and of itself is awesome, but asking a lot of really smart questions. Let's kind of get into the Brock Bowers segment of questions first and foremost. Do you expect an increase in 11 personnel? And he says 4 wide receivers, 1 running back without Brock in passing downs. So basically, so 11 personnel means 1 running back, 1 tight end. If you're keeping score at home, if I'm not mistaken, if you would have 1 running back and 1 tight end, then you could only have 3 wide receivers on the field. But I think you're probably saying you're probably thinking of Delp as maybe a wide receiver on this one. But I'm just clarifying for those that are listening or watching this. So what 4 would you expect basically to see on the field? And I'm assuming you're if we're talking 11 personnel, then we're going to say one of those is a tight end. I guess we're assuming that's Delp, although I wouldn't automatically assume that. Since you're saying passing downs, third down, like in Jacksonville, yeah, I think that's a safe assumption. But I think Lawson Lucky's got a very good chance to emerge in a pretty significant way over the coming month. So you think, Ladd and Lovett in the slot with Rosemy Rara out wide. I don't think that. I think, well, I'm not saying you think that, but that's your question. Ladd is an outside receiver, and people, I feel like, don't really realize that a lot of time. Or they look at his size and they think that he's kind of something else. But the reality is that McConkey has played outside for basically his entire Georgia career. And that's why Tremaine Burton is in Tuscaloosa right now, truthfully, is because Ladd came and started taking all the snaps at Z. Ladd has taken 74% of his snaps out wide this year. And last year he took, let's see, 75%. So he's staying pretty consistent. I think on third down, that's where you want him. I think I think you want him out wide. Like, he's really good at creating space, and he's particularly good at creating space on the boundaries. So let him do what he's best at. That's, I think, how he's most effective. I would put Rara out wide, and I would let Lovett work in the slot, and then I think you'd have Delp in the slot basically, or Delp as an inline, and and then obviously a running back. And if I was talking running back on third down, um, you could put Dylan Bell back there, but we've seen Dejan Edwards catching more passes out of the backfield lately. So I think that's the lineup that I would want to run with. And yeah, thank you for the question, T Mac. And then what I loved about this question was that Geo, you came and kind of followed up with it, or I'm sorry, you sort of followed up behind it. Uh, Follow up from above, more 21 personnel with Dylan Bell and running back in the backfield. How we were lining up with Brock. Also, Lad goes to slot moving forward and Dom to Z question mark. So no, I don't. I think to answer the back end first, Lad I think will stay at Z. Dom has been playing in the slot mostly this year. Let me pull his numbers up real quick here. So yeah, so far this season, 84.2% of Dominic Lovett's receiving snaps, his routes run have come out of the slot. He's got 156 routes run this year, and 139 of those have come out of the slot. So we've really only seen him out wide a few times. We did see that more this past week, to kind of credit you for maybe having an eye ahead of things. He had 8 of his 32 snaps out wide against Vanderbilt, and that was closer to 25%, or really right at 25%. So I think there will be an interplay between those two, right? And I think that's a big part of how you not replace. You can't really replace Brock Bowers, but how you don't miss a beat without him out there is you let McConkey and Lovett kind of overload that right side of the formation together and let them take turns occupying the high safety on that side for each other. Like, put Lovett in the slot, let him run a deep seam route or a deep post and pull that safety downfield, and then you get Lad one-on-one with a boundary corner, or let Lad go run a deep post and suck that safety towards the middle of the field, and do like a scissors concept and let Lovett go on a deep corner route, or let Lovett work some sort of in breaking type of deal. I think there's obviously a ton of different route combinations they can run with those guys, but that is the kind of X factor, I think, for Georgia. If you're pointing to, oh God, like Brock is gone. Yes, Brock is gone, but I think when you get to this Florida game, you're going to see McConkey playing, kind of starter level snaps for the first time all year. And what that opens up for everybody else could be significant. And if defenses don't respect Lad, in the sense of they leave him in single coverage against a boundary corner, then you can make that work for you as well. You can move that slot over to the left side of the formation, leave McConkey out wide at Z, especially when you're on the left hash, and go heavy personnel, run play action, let Lad go double move on some guys like he did in the Tennessee game last year. Like, that kid will get open if you put him one-on-one in any level of space without help. Even will get open if you have safety help. So I think that's a big part of the formula for Georgia moving forward is both McConkey and Lovett. As far as the 21 personnel, I think there's got to be a lot of stuff in the playbook that we haven't seen from those two running back sets. Like, I'd love to see Dylan Bell and Edwards, in a 2-back set with both of them running some sort of wheel type concept out wide, because like that pulls people out of the middle of the field, and then then you have your lads running slants, or you have other possibilities. I would love to see, like, at some point there's got to be in this playbook play action to Bell on what looks like kind of an inside zone type situation, and he just keeps running up that hole on a seam, Like, just let him run through the A gap or the B gap like he would have if he had taken the ball, but he just keeps going and you hit him for, a shot up the seam. Like, I think that there's a ton of interesting things. I know there's interesting things that are in this playbook from the two back standpoint, and I'm excited to see it. And I think at some point soon we will. And I think that might be, what I loved about Mike Bobo's game plan against Kentucky was there was a recognition there that, like, we don't want to get into a football game where um, Kentucky is comfortable, like, going on 14 play drives and sucking out the clock and shortening the number of possessions in this game. Like, we want to get into a football game where we force Devin Leary to throw. And they came out and they did that early, right? Like, they got up 14 nothing and then 21 nothing, and Kentucky was basically toast at that point. I think with Bowers gone, that was kind of your safety valve, right? Like, that was what you did in the case of an emergency, was you broke the glass and Brock Bowers was behind the glass, and you chucked it to him down the middle of the field in Jordan Hare Stadium, and he made one hand stabs on balls behind him for 25-yard gains, or he went and high pointed something down the boundary on a kind of, delayed sort of route. Like, I think there's a lot of importance now on Georgia sort of solving this slow start situation. And I think they've, nothing's ever solved, right? Like, every week is a new game and a new opponent that can create new issues. But I feel pretty good about their ability to get rolling. I think that, that Kentucky game was sort of the first time all year we've seen Georgia come out in a game that it really wanted to make a, strong impression early in, and we saw them make that impression. So that's my 2 cents. Hopefully I opened your question. I'm sorry, hopefully I answered your question. Can you go through the options we have at D line and edge? What each player has as a skill set and ceiling, and who you think might be likely to emerge over the bye week? Yes, I can. Let's pull up the group here. So, I mean, the thing that's interesting about the edge, first off, is, and I'm going to keep this to guys who have actually played a snap so far this year. I hope that's all right with you guys. I don't think that's crazy. So you don't have Tyron Ingram Dawkins, who, look, is he a traditional edge? I think that's first thing we got to define here. Well, you said DL and edge. Okay, so that's a lot of guys. So I'm not gonna read the entire depth chart. I think let's kind of break this into categories, right? You've got high floor veterans, right? You've got Zion Logue, Nazir Stackhouse. Those have been your starters at defensive tackle. We're going to start a defensive tackle with this. Logue has a lot of length, and he's smart, and he plays his keys well. He's rarely, if ever, out of position. He has 4 pressures this year, which is more than, like, Stackhouse has. He's done a decent job. I think he's given you about what you would expect out of him. Like, he put on some weight this offseason, so I think he's been better against the run maybe than he has been in the past. He's a good player. He's not a great player. I think there's a chance he plays in the NFL, but he's right now, in terms of the skill set and ceiling, the skill set seems to be, he's not going to give up space, but he's not going to take it from other people. And the ceiling seems to be, not terribly low. Like, there was a play against UAB where he literally walked the center back into the quarterback's lap. And then there's been a lot of plays against SEC offensive lines where, quite frankly, he's gotten stood up. Stackhouse, like I don't know what's going on with Nazir. I've almost started to wonder if he's hurt or if he put on some weight this summer that was bad weight for him. I'm not sure, but something has changed about his game from 2022 to now. It's not just that Jalen Carter's gone and Jalen Carter was occupying double teams. Like, even when Jalen Carter was out, Stackhouse was very, very good for Georgia last year, and he has struggled so far this season. He has 1 pressure in 100 pass rush attempts. Like, he is a good run defender for sure. He has 5 stop plays this season, which basically just denotes an unsuccessful play for the offense. But I mean, coming into the season, people were like, this guy is a, 3rd to 4th round draft pick probably. And maybe if he has a phenomenal year and like really flourishes, he has the stuff to be a day 1 pick. He has not been that guy this year. Like I don't know if that changes after the bye week. Obviously, Georgia will hope it does. I mean, I hope nothing but success for all these kids, right? Like, I want to see them get paid. I want to see them do all the things that they want to do in life. But his skill set right now, he's definitely always been more of a run defender for sure. But last year we started to see the pass kind of, we started to see him look more and more disruptive at times in pass rush. And that was, at the end of the year, like LSU game in particular, I thought he played really, really well. He was starting to look like a guy that was a legitimate, like, 3-down type lineman, which those are hard to come by. You're talking about a guy that's really good against the run on 1st and 2nd and really good rushing the passer on 3rd down. So those have been the 2 starters. The guys coming in behind them, Warren Brinson. Warren Brinson has been the best interior lineman from Georgia so far this year from kind of any measure, in my opinion. Brinson's got 10 pressures on 119 pass rush snaps. He does lead all Georgia linemen with 119 pass rush snaps. He's okay against the run. He's good against the run. He's got, like, Warren's issue, I think, why you don't see Warren maybe starting like some people think he should be, has been that, historically speaking, his run defense is not as consistent as others. He's such an athletic lineman that he has the ability to jump, like, shoot gaps at the snap. And that's a great thing on 3rd down when it's time to go get the quarterback. Sometimes it's a bad thing on 1st and 2nd down because you shoot a gap and the running back goes and runs, the handoff comes as you're flying past and the running back goes where you were, and all of a sudden you've busted a contain up front. So that's Warren. Like, he's not a starter, so to speak, but you look at the snap counts and he's played more snaps so far this year than I think any Georgia D lineman. So that tells you what they think about him. Like, he's a leader for sure. Kristen Miller, you saw him on Saturday. I don't know what his ceiling is yet, but I think it's higher. I think Brinson's athletic ceiling is very high as well. I think Kristen Miller is a little bit of like I would kind of say he's a Devontae Wyatt type comp, right? Like, he's 305, he's 6'4", maybe 6'3 and a half, a little more lower center of gravity, very athletic for his size. My eye on him has just been that when he comes into the game, he starts moving folks in a way that is noticeable compared to the players that he's replacing. Like, he came into the game on the 2nd series against Vandy, and all of a sudden, he came in as well as other guys, but like they subbed out Stackhouse and Logue and Chambliss, and I believe Walther as well. And you saw things get better. The last interior lineman that I think is worth talking about at this point, in like terms of there's an actual chance he'll play, is Jordan Hall. Highest ceiling of any of these guys we've talked about yet. Like former 5-star, he fits the bill. 5 pressures so far this year on 61 pass rush snaps. Just so you know, Miller has 3 on 67. Miller, for the record, he's incredibly productive against the run. 8 stop plays this year, which is high. Yeah, tied for 5th most on Georgia's defense. And there's not another, there's not another lineman really in that conversation. He's got the most of any defensive lineman, interior or exterior. So you're talking about a really good run defender who I think is starting to show promise as a pass rusher. But Jordan Hall, I think if you're comparing the 2 young linemen, probably a little bit better pass rusher. Like I said, 5 pressures so far this year. Not quite as good against the run yet. That's why you're seeing him in more 3rd down packages. I think what the reality is of the decisions that Georgia has to make from a personnel standpoint is Hall, Miller, Brinson, all are more explosive. All, I think, have a better chance of being disruptive. They all also have a better chance of being in the wrong spot on a run play and making a mistake that will cause someone to gash Georgia in the run. So that's sort of the conundrum. And I think that's why you see so much. I mean, Georgia's always rotated guys on the defensive line, but like you're seeing it more than ever really between these guys right now. They're not rotating as many guys as they did in years past, but they're rotating them a lot. And it's just because they got to. Just because the skill sets, there's not anybody on this defensive line right now, save for maybe Warren Brinson, that you trust to get to the quarterback on 3rd down and stuff the run, really, really consistently on 1st and 2nd down. That's what you're dealing with. And then at the edge positions, there's a ton of young talent there. Okay. So that's Gabe Harris, Samuel Mpimba, Darius Smith. Those are all, Gabe has kind of moved to defensive end, but like those are all your sort of young, freaky, long, talented edge rushers that have been in the program for, this is their 2nd season at most. And they're raw and they probably don't set the edge very well for the most part. None of them can really be trusted yet from a run defense standpoint. So they can be used as pass rushers, and we've seen Darius in particular come in and rush the passer. We've seen Wilson do it too. He's got 24 pass rush snaps this year and 4 pressures. That's more like garbage time and bad opponents, but that's a good hit rate. That is indicative of something, I would say. I would say like after the bye week, that is a guy that I would like to see more. And then you got Marvin Jones Jr., who is kind of at the top of that heap, right? Like he's the guy that they, I think, expected to emerge in a way that he hasn't yet. And, only 31 pass rush snaps for Marvin this year, which I think is not that many. And it's kind of telling that we haven't seen him more. If Marvin could set the edge with consistency, then I don't think you'd see Chaz Chambliss starting anymore, but he just hasn't shown he can do that. He's gotten better for sure, but he's not quite there. You got Chambliss. Like Marvin's ceiling is, I mean, all these guys like Wilson, Jones Jr., Gabe Harris, Impemba, four former 5-star edges that are all, in their first or second year in the program. One of those has to hit. I think right now, today, if there was a rash of injuries and you had to throw one of them out there besides Marvin Jones Jr., who is kind of second on the depth chart right now, maybe first by the time we come out of the bye week, like I think that Gabe Harris is the one that you trust the most today to play the run. And because he can play the run, then he gets to play the pass. That's kind of how it works at Georgia. As far as the sort of stealing of all those guys, like, if any of them can be first round picks, like legitimately. Um, Next, what you have is the what I would call the X factor in this whole situation, and that is Jalen Walker. Um, that guy could be Dallas Turner. He could, or he could be Harold Perkins Jr. Like 2022 Harold Perkins Jr., not 2023 Harold Perkins Jr. He could be Harold Perkins Jr. with actual coverage skills. That dude's a freak. In the Kentucky game, there was a series in the fourth quarter or late third quarter where it's like he lines up an inside linebacker for 2 plays, blows up a run, blows up a screen pass, and then he goes lines up on the edge at third down and hits the quarterback while he's throwing the ball and forces an incompletion. He can do that. Like he will play in the NFL, and he is. What's interesting is that going to his 2022 tape, like I think he is a very, very good setter of the edge. And you are not getting good edge setting out of Chambliss and Marvin Jones Jr. I think that with Jalen Walker, you've got 8 pressures on only 32 pass rush snaps this year. So that's basically a 25% hit rate on him getting to the quarterback in pass rush situations. He's a very sound tackler, which I cannot say for Marvin Jones Jr. at the moment. MJJ's got 3 missed tackles this year, and he's got 3 missed tackles and 2 tackles. So that's a bad sign. And like Kirby Smart's not putting you out there if he doesn't trust you to tackle. If I am Georgia, I think the hang up for Georgia is they think that Jalen Walker is probably a future all-pro NFL inside linebacker, and that he could be, an all SEC or all American inside linebacker for them. And a lot of what Georgia's defense does rotates around that inside linebacker position. So I don't think they want to lose him to the edge, especially when it's like, hey, we got a 5-star that's 6'6" in Marvin Jones Jr. We've got 3 5-stars behind him that, all should develop, and they all are freaky long and athletic. And Damon Wilson has an absurd bend. Like Wilson should be your pass rush specialist, and I think that there's a chance he becomes that down the stretch. Harris and Impemba, both very physical, like more likely to, I think, play first and second down early in their careers than Damon Wilson is. Not to say Wilson can't be a 3-down edge. He certainly can be and probably will be very soon. But Jalen Walker, I think, is all those things right now. Like I would consider rolling with him at edge, or at least, having him in the rotation of guys that you bring in the game to play 3 downs. I think Chambliss is a really hard worker. He does everything that he's asked to do, but he's just not comfortable doing a lot of the things that his need to do on first and second down. He's not comfortable in coverage. He cannot play with his back to the quarterback. He really can't play zone coverage very well either. Like Liam Cohen from Kentucky, the offensive coordinator, who I have a ton of respect for, came up under Sean McVay with the LA Rams. Like, he hunted Chambliss over and over and over in the first half of that game. So those are the guys you're talking about. Obviously, like at what I would call, kind of D end, the edges are the jack linebackers, the OLBs, the guys that are standing up. They're playing the old Nolan Smith, Azeez Ojolari position. And the D ends are Mykel Williams. Mykel's your DN. He's your starting DN. He should be your starting DN. He can do everything. He can play any spot up across the line of scrimmage, depending on down and distance and what package if you want to be heavy or if you want to be in your quote unquote NASCAR packages where you're rushing the passer. Like that's the dude that you trust. And the other guy that's played a lot of defensive ends so far this year has been Tramel Walther, and he's done a good job of it. Like, he's not setting the world on fire. He's got 2 pressures, but his run defense has been good, and his tackling has been sound, and that is more than you can say at times for a lot of these guys, really. Chambliss, there's the if you can keep him out of coverage, he's more than good enough to do what he needs to do. I think the big thing with him at Jack is just not sucking inside too early on certain downs. Like, there's times where he goes inside too fast to try and play a run fake, and he leaves the back door open for the quarterback to run out of. But honestly, like the last couple games, he has been better. So I think what you have right now at Georgia is, like, there's a reason that question was so hard and long to answer. Is you got a big mishmash of really talented guys, and none of them have emerged, and none of them are doing enough of the things that you need them to do across 3 downs to really like warrant a change. And so that's what you're seeing across the defensive line right now. The philosophy is like, we're going to go for less mistakes, but also less havoc than, more opportunities possibly for havoc, but also more opportunities for missed assignments that lead to busted runs or a guy coming uncovered off, out of the backfield or something like that. So that is the answer for you. Okay. Scott asks, what film is there for us to watch that'll show what this offense will be moving forward? I think Kentucky is the most accurate representation we've seen of this offense so far. Or you could go, truthfully, if you guys want to know the God's honest truth, and some of you won't like this, go watch the 2022 Georgia offense on its best days. Like, that's what this offense will be, moving forward. Like, Brock, if you go back to 2022, like, yes, he was part of the offense and he had some big games, but Georgia wasn't really force feeding him like they have been so far this year. And I think the truth is that Delp is more than good enough to get the ball. Like, the tight ends will still be involved in the offense. That takes us to your second question. Is Lawson Lucky a future dude? Yeah, he is. Straight up, there's people that watch practice every day that, like, I talk to, and their feeling is that Oscar Delp is a very good player, like a really good player. They love him. They think he can do a lot of great things, but like, they feel like Lawson Lucky, when he showed up, was the best route running tight end in the room and maybe the best blocker in the room already. And like, it has just been a stud, basically. and he is a stud, and like he's a really good player. I think that he's gonna announce himself to a lot of people over the next 4 weeks. Uh, my take on Delp is that Delp has become a much better blocker than I ever thought he could be. I'm not saying he's great, but he's more than serviceable. And I thought the throw to him up the seam against Vanderbilt on Saturday was like very symbolic in a way, because it was late in the first half. That tempo drive that Georgia went on, they went, I think 20-yarder up the seam to Delp, and then 30-yarder down the left sideline to Lovett to set up a touchdown with the whip route. Like, I think that, you're talking about a guy who can do what you need him to do, more than can do. Like, he's a really, really good tight end, and I think he'll see the ball a lot. And I think that with Bowers gone, it might open up some opportunities for him, really. Like, just with, I think opponents will be paying less attention to Georgia's tight end, so it could be a good thing for him. But I do think that Lawson Lucky's got the highest ceiling of anybody in that room right now. Although I wouldn't sleep on the 6'7" Pierce Sperlin and maybe him catching something in the red zone. Defensive bus. Do we run less zone moving forward? Georgia doesn't really run. A lot of they're doing a lot of pattern matching, right? So like a lot of their defensive, sometimes they're running zone on one side, and you know they're running, kind of mixed concepts and all sorts of stuff. I don't think they'll run. I mean, they don't really run that much zone as it is. I mean, like their safeties are in, they've got two high safeties. Those guys are playing zone, but Georgia's corners, they man up and they play. That's kind of what I meant earlier in the open when I was talking about the Vanderbilt game being a chance to practice things for them. Like, that's a defense they don't run that much. You don't really see Georgia switch ever, honestly, in situations like that. So, point being, I think that I think it's a non-factor. Honestly, I wouldn't really worry about it. All right. What players would you put as most likely to quote unquote make the leap coming out of the bye? This is from our friend Dog Hog. I would go first with, let's see. Sorry. I'm gonna go first with Jordan Hall. I think you're gonna see more of him. I think you're gonna see him and Kristen Miller both play more and more significant snaps. I would say Monroe Freeling. I mean, we saw him come in on Saturday, but I think he's better than a lot of people realized. It's sort of been a well-kept secret. Lawson Lucky has got to be one of these, I think. I mean, it's just the talent that he has. It's hard to feel like he's not going to do something exciting with more reps. The one that I'll say, my number one guy is Jalen Walker. They got to let that dude go wreak havoc, because that guy can wreak havoc. And then you also asked, and so David, you asked for some guys who emerge as well. I feel like we just kind of answered that question. Dog Hog also asked, can you rank the position group that has the most improvement to do in order to keep this team undefeated, whether it is injury or just, needing to improve? And then he said defensive line, inside linebacker, edge, running back, offensive line. I think the offensive line has figured it out. Even when Freeling came in on Saturday, they really didn't miss a beat. I was very impressed with that whole, I think that Van Pran and Rowledge have gotten on the same page. I think Cedric has been playing really well all year. I think it took Tate a little while to figure it out, but he did all of a sudden, and now those two guys are kind of anchoring everything. I think Ernest Green, man, like we went from talking about him weekly and some, sort of being like, oh, like he had a good game, but here's a missed assignment. Like that dude is playing out of his mind right now at right tackle. Like he is, or I'm sorry, at left tackle. Like he is picking up all sorts of stuff. Like he's not getting overloaded. Like I've seen teams try to overload that side with blitzers and confuse him, and he's picking up the right guys. Like I'm impressed with his play from a physical standpoint, but I'm really impressed with his like knowledge of protection schemes and being able to grab the right assignment as a basically a freshman that didn't play at all last year. So I feel good about the offensive line. I think the inside linebackers look like Dumas Johnson was banged up, and I don't think many people knew it. I thought he looked a lot better the last 2 weeks, and I'm not concerned about the inside linebacker position at Georgia. There's so many good players there that group is gonna be fine. I question if Mondon doesn't need to, you know, maybe be spelled at times from an inside linebacker standpoint. Like I think that his coverage has been lacking a little bit lately, but I I'm not worried about that spot. I am gonna say running back is fine. Those guys, I mean, that's gonna be the healthiest running back room that we've seen all year when they go to Jacksonville. I expect them to have Roderick Robinson, Kendall Milton, and Dejan Edwards all ready to carry the rock with significant amount. Um, it's either DL or edge, and I mean we've just talked about those positions extensively, but I think for me, I think edge is a bigger concern. Like if you have a defensive lineman, if you have an interior lineman, a D tackle that can create havoc and in particular create push against the passing game, then that is a huge bonus, and it's a wonderful thing to have, and it allows you to really really flourish in a lot of ways. But like I I don't think you need that necessarily to like go win a championship. You just need to have sound play. You need to have guys that are not gonna get pushed around, and Georgia does have that. I think you are gonna have a hard time winning big if you don't trust your edge guys to, you know, like right now, I'm not sure you trust Georgia's edges against the run or the pass, at least not on if you're talking 10 downs, 10 running plays, I'm thinking 1 to 2, you're gonna have some mistake at that position right now. So I think they got to figure it out. They got to figure out the edge. That's my position of need. Um, why do you think the defense has underperformed so far this year for a Kirby Smart defense, at least with so many returning players? I think injury has been a big part of it. I think losing Jalen Carter, like this is the first time that we've seen Georgia without uh, a first round D tackle in like 4 years, maybe 5 years. Um, I'm not saying Wyatt and Davis were playing that way back in 2019, but at times they were like, I mean, they were there. They had guys that were really good, and just I think that you know the when you have a defensive line that's dominant, it just makes everything easy on everybody else. Like your linebackers don't get exposed in coverage because they don't have to cover for that long. There's just 1,000 things that like you don't have to really get tested on if your defensive line erases shit before it ever happens, and that's what Georgia's defensive line did the last couple of years. So I think that's the answer. I would say that you know, um, Dog Stats, Josh Hancher was talking to John Powell from My Got a Podcast, and basically those guys were saying that there are some good kind of benchmarks. Like Georgia statistically, very similar to where they were this time last year as a team. There's in 2022, Georgia was a team that was uh, 2.43 points per drive. Right now, there's 8 teams that are plus 2.0 points per drive. Georgia is one of them. The last 5 national champions were plus 2.0 points per drive, so it's a good sign. Net yard per play, the offense is basically right on schedule with last year, and the defense is actually surprisingly very close as well. So I think the Auburn game left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, but like that Vandy game, it's just, is that really a sample in the sense of, I don't know, like, are they going to bust coverages in Jacksonville or in Knoxville? If the answer is yes, then like, yeah, they're going to have problems. I just think that in some ways, the puppet master is sort of pulling some strings a little bit. Like, I don't know that we've really seen the full version of this defense like quite yet. I think the defense has to step up for sure. And I mean, maybe with Bowers going out, there will be a sense of urgency for those guys. But the defense, they struggled in that first half against Auburn with the quarterback run, and then they fixed it. And they played not great in the second half, but like they never gave up a touchdown drive in that game that wasn't off a turnover. Like they're good. It's a good defense, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And I think there's some things that can really start clicking, but the biggest thing that they need to do, and it's not even, I mean, it's a luck thing. And I would say the fact that Georgia has not forced a lot of turnovers yet this year probably bodes well for their chances of forcing more turnovers down the stretch, because turnovers are just kind of a luck stat. They're very subject to variance. Like there are quarterbacks who create more of them than others, but the truth of the matter is that Georgia, in most of the games they've played this year, Auburn didn't really throw the football on them. One time they did, really. They got picked off. And then Kentucky, like Georgia, did not force turnovers in that game, which you could say is a concern for sure. But they forced turnovers on Rattler late in that game when they needed to. Like they held Rattler to 6 of 24 passing to end that game. I mean, that's pretty good. He's had a really good year. My point that I'm getting at is just that Georgia hasn't played many teams that have actually tried to beat Georgia. Like UAB, they actually kind of played a balls out style. And, I think Georgia had a turnover or 2 in that game. But like a lot of the teams that Georgia's playing out of conference, they're not trying to win. They're trying to not get embarrassed. Like there's kind of a gentleman's agreement before the game of like, hey, you guys don't throw the ball 70 times today and, make this a lot more unnecessarily like longer than it needs to be. And I won't run the score up on you. I'm not saying that's actual conversations that are happening, but like there's a little bit of a understanding, I think, going into some of these games of like, and also these teams, they're not stupid. They don't want to put their best stuff on the tape against Georgia when it's not even going to work and be executed properly anyways. Like save your best scheme for down the road against your conference opponents in games that are going to determine whether your staff gets their contracts renewed or not. That's how these G5 opponents are thinking more often than not. So you'll see a lot more teams that are, like Tennessee is going to try to beat Georgia. Florida is going to try to beat Georgia. Missouri is going to try to beat Georgia. And in doing that, like, yes, you don't want to drop back against this Georgia defense over and over and over. Like there's things that you can't do against UGA, but the ball is going to get put in danger more over the next 5 games than it has been in the first 7 games. And I think Georgia will come down with some more turnovers. And when you come down with more turnovers, then like those in drives, they don't accumulate more more yardage after the turnover. They go to the bench, and I think that has a big impact on stats that people don't really talk about sometimes, especially on like yardage stats and some of that type of stuff. Will we see more back shoulder throws to Ra Thomas? How do you expect Georgia to try to generate more of a pass rush over the second half of the season? I think we've talked a lot about the pass rush, but we haven't really talked about the solution to the problem. Right now, Georgia is, in order to generate a pass rush, Georgia has to bring someone from the back 7. Look, that's what it is until proven differently. Until proven otherwise, Georgia is a team that has to bring, inside linebackers and corners. Or we haven't really seen much of anything in terms of safety blitzes. I don't think. Let's see. Starks has 4 pass rush snaps this year. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that we haven't seen a ton of safety blitzes. Bullard has not rushed the passer yet. Put a pin in that one because we know he's very good at doing it. There will come a time where you'll see some like exotic safety blitz, up the A gap or something that will probably be awesome. But they ain't burning those in the games that they've played so far. I think the best way to generate more of a pass rush is to to play better pass rushers. Like I would put Jordan Hall out there. I think Brinson has shown he can generate a pass rush. Michael Williams, he's not played as much as he did last. I wondered if he's dealing with a little something. I know he's still working. He had that foot injury, and I wonder how much that's really limited him over the first half of the season. But he looked more like Michael against Vanderbilt. So I think that's going to come and happen over the next month. Like we'll see him come off the edges. And then, look, I mean, I would put Damon Wilson in there or somebody like that. Like, you got 3 5-star true freshmen. I think Wilson is the most natural bend and, pass rush kind of guy of those. You might want to just see what happens. I do think you'll see more back shoulder throws to Ra as the season goes on. Like I said, y'all don't get into this stupid. I'm not saying that you, question asker, did this, but don't get into this stupid bullshit over the Vanderbilt game where you're like, oh, well, Bobo's doing this to the offense. No, that's not the offense. Okay. Like that's just the most vanilla thing that they could call that day. And Vanderbilt was sitting in like a giant shell zone defense where they were basically, begging Georgia to throw it deep. Georgia ran all verts like 5 times in that game. And like you can't throw all verts into that. Like they ran it basically like when they had to run something, on long yardage, but like it was like, okay, we're gonna run all verts and Carson's just gonna like throw a short seam, like point being when Georgia plays a team that's actually trying to win the game instead of keep the game close and limit explosive plays, which is a very different thing than trying to win the game and get off the field, then you'll see them actually try to stop the run. And then you'll see Ra and Roseme and those guys back in situations on the boundary where it's appropriate to throw 50-50 balls. So, yes, you will see that. With Arian Smith struggling, do you expect to see CJ Smith get more reps? If not CJ, who can stretch the defense vertically? Do you okay, well, one at a time. I don't know if it'll be CJ that gets more reps. Like I could see them doing Lovett, like run Lovett. I mean, they're not having trouble stretching defenses vertically, guys. They're not. Like Carson Beck is like one of the 5 highest passing yardage players in the country right now. Arian not catching the ball well, but like Georgia is doing a great job of getting guys deep and occupying safeties so that other guys can be open deep. I think that CJ is a option maybe. We haven't really seen exactly how fast he is. It seems like they're enjoying playing him. They're like he's getting some decent run over some other guys who are more experienced. So I think that bodes well for him. I mean, yeah, he's got 47 receiving snaps this year, but to me, I think like love it. You've seen a lot of the short stuff. You've seen a little bit of intermediate stuff. At some point in here, the deep balls are going to get like layered onto that, and you're going to start seeing Lovett on double moves and some more creative route concepts. And when that comes, you'll know why. All right. How many more players do you think Georgia gets in the 2024 class? I don't know, Cam, to be honest with you, man. It's too far from signing day right now to say that. It depends if there's other guys that decommit or flip or whatever. It also depends on, who are we talking about? Is it someone that they really want, or is it just a guy? I would think there's at least a few more up the sleeve. You saw them they get the corner commit Andre Evans today. That was very solid. I think the question is sort of, who else do they go for after that? I think you're going to see a good amount of wide receivers that they're pushing hard for and trying to get committed. So we'll find out. Given what Kentucky did to Florida, does Beck throw the ball at all in 2 weeks? Yeah, of course he does. I mean, Florida's run defense this year, has it been that bad? I mean, they didn't tackle for shit that day, but that's more of an issue of them being like soft. And, I'm sure Georgia's going to try and run the ball at them. Don't get me wrong. But that day they did look soft, I will admit. But I mean, their defense is 38th in points per game allowed. That's solid. 35th in yards a game allowed. They are 89th in yards per play allowed. So they must be they're really good on third down, and they're pretty good in the red zone. They are giving up 4.7 yards a rush. That's not great. Yeah, I mean I think that's why you saw Georgia run all of that inside slam, inside zone read type stuff against Vandy, was to try and rep that before the second half. And I think that particularly starts with Florida. But I think that if Georgia can get the run going early in that game, then the play action shots that it opens up for Beck are going to be significant. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Is a cereal a soup? Is a Pop-Tart a ravioli? Dog Hog, David and Brandon. No, a hot dog is not a sandwich. Cereal might be a soup. I think cereal is a soup. It's just a sweet soup. And no, Pop-Tart's not a ravioli. It's a pastry. But, what if they made Pop-Tart flavored ravioli? It could be delicious. All right, last question. When you watch a game on TV or in the building, what do you look for? Let me find the full question. I'm sorry. Is when you watch a game on TV or in the building, where are your eyes looking before the ball snaps and as the play unfolds? Feels like I've learned more from you in this site about noticing things like motions drawing defenders or definitely offensive line pulling or dropping back. Just curious how you watch football. Yeah, no, I mean I would say like the film study stuff that I do, a lot of that stuff I notice most of that on rewatch when I'm watching the actual game. Depends on the play. My eyes are just kind of drawn to different things. You know, I sort of like catch a pulling guard out of my periphery or something. But my best advice for you if you want to like really understand football is to don't watch the ball, which is it's definitely counterintuitive and um it's really not a great way to watch the sport as like an entertainment product in the traditional sense, but it is very entertaining to watch the one-on-one matchups, and then you start understanding like why games are won and lost, and how they're won and lost, and who does that. uh I think like everybody, and I mean bye week is a great time for this because if you're not watching like your team, I think it's a lot easier to participate in this exercise. But just pick like a series of a game, or a couple series in a game, and say like I'm gonna watch the center on this play, or I'm gonna watch the left tackle on this play, or whatever. Like pick some, or just watch the offensive line versus the defensive line. Like you can do that. It's really fun to watch a really good offensive line that's played together for a long time. And you truthfully, you see this less in college now, but like 2013 Missouri was like this. 2017 Georgia was like this. Like a an offensive line that's really good at running like some stretch zone type stuff. They're fun to watch because like the snap happens and they're all moving, and it's a dance, really, is what it is. And like Georgia's offensive line and gap scheme, like I guess what was it? The Kentucky game was beautiful to watch. Go back and watch. Go watch Tate Ratledge for like some series of the Kentucky game and watch where he ends up at the end of plays or how he pulls in certain plays. Like, I think games are, for all the talk of quarterbacks and wide receivers and all of that stuff that makes the sport entertaining to most people. Like a lot of games are won and lost at the line of scrimmage, and quarterbacks, they can't do anything if their offensive line is being overwhelmed. So, I think that you'll see like a good number of teams that if they had like Washington or Oregon and all of that, like you saw Michael Penix, they won that game eventually despite the fact that their offensive line didn't really win, so to speak, against Oregon's defensive line very much. Like that was an achievement. It was a really good game, great job by them, but like that doesn't happen unless somebody has a fantastic performance. So I guess the point I'm driving at is matchups make games. Like the game is made out of 11 matchups basically, or 10 matchups if you take the quarterback out of it. There's 5 that are really easy to break down, which is the 5 offensive linemen, or maybe an inline tight end versus the guys across from them, and then you go out from there. And like I have a saying that football is still played from the inside out, and that just means that like if you have a fatal flaw that is close to the football as an offense or as a defense, then eventually that gets exposed. And like the 2021 Georgia Clemson game, when that center for Clemson was starting his first game, like Just remember sitting in that stadium and just like watching that dude get blown up over and over and over, being like, you can't win a football game like that unless you have some crazy special teams or turnover luck. You really can't. So, um, those are the things that I'm like looking for more often than not. This is going to sound negative, maybe, or I hope it doesn't. But the truth of the matter is that, like, when I watch football, I'm really looking for. I'm looking for like red lights more than I'm looking for green lights. A lot of football games are lost more often than they are won, and so early in a football game, I'm looking for the duck, so to speak. Like, who's the guy that can't hold his space, or who's the guy that keeps getting blown off the ball on defense, or who's the guy that can't cover. Like, those are the things that I'm kind of watching for in real time, or that I'm interested in. Team substitute and all of that. Like, they're good coaches will find a way around all that stuff, but it's it's very interesting, and I think that the way that I think about the sport is just like, can can the offense, like, can the offense for team X do what it wants to do against team Y, or does it have to is it forced to do, try and do something that it's not comfortable doing? Like, if you can force a team into doing something it's not comfortable doing, then you're gonna have success. So this is a long wormhole. I shouldn't follow it any further, but it'd be a fun off-season show to do. I mean, like, I don't, like, I'm not an NFL scout or something like that. I mean, like, I look at I think I look at the game more like probably like an analyst does for like a program, like somebody that's paid to like break down teams, or find an edge. Like, when I do my long form preview content, it's usually like, I want to find the guy that's gonna get beat, basically. That's what I'm looking for. So that's all I got for today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. And please come and join us over at DawgsCentral.com. We have an incredible community there. We're doing a lot of cool things, and it's growing. And it's like it's a fun place to be. There's a lot of really smart people with a lot of really interesting things to say, and you don't have people talking about politics, and you don't have people talking about a bunch of non-football related stuff. If you want a place to talk about football and discuss it with your friends and family, or not family necessarily, but like, if you want a place to have intelligent football conversations without a bunch of bullshit, without a bunch of people calling each other names, or without a bunch of like wild takes that are never defended, then Dog Central is the place for you. Hope we see you there.